Alright, well here at the rings, I just want to run you through the progression schemes for the big movements so that wherever you're at with your strength training, you can start somewhere and start progressing towards the big strength goals. The key concept here is that everything scales to zero. So all the movement patterns that end with the big strength goals can all be regressed back to a level that you can train as long as you can move your limbs through space. There's a level that you can use to start progressing. All these movement patterns sit on a spectrum of difficulty right from the strength goals, which you aim to get to in the end. And by the time you get there, you can have all the strength physique that you want to have for life, all the way down to super easy, requiring zero strength to perform, so that as long as you can move your limbs through space, you can train there, start working there, and scale up as you get stronger. This might take 5 years, that's fine. The idea is that you start where you're at, and as long as you're moving up that spectrum over time, you're getting closer to your dream body, dream physique, all the things we want. Now, the difficulty level that you're going to use is going to change in the set as you train. If you train with enough intent, you recover, then over the weeks that difficulty level is going to increase on average, but your level of difficulty is going to change throughout your reps, throughout your sets, as you get tired and weaker, and also as your strength varies throughout the range of motion, because each movement varies in how difficult it is across the range of motion of a single rep. The idea is to use these progression schemes to find a level of difficulty that matches your strength at any given point in time and work there. Weakness is no excuse for poor training, neither is strength. There's always a level that will challenge you perfectly for wherever you're at. This is how you find it. So let's get into it and show you how these progression schemes work. Alright, so none of these are super complicated. With the planche push-ups, we're simply manipulating the amount of forward lean of the shoulder in front of the position where the hands are. So the reason that a planche push-up is difficult is because there's such a gap between your shoulders and your hands, and that creates a lot of leverage, which means you have to generate a huge amount of force at the shoulder, hence why you need big pecs, big shoulders to be able to do this movement. So the heavy version winds up with push-ups looking like this, with your legs outstretched, and that's a level we want to build up to long-term as a lifetime strength goal. Ideally to a full straddle planche push-up. Now to scale that down, it's super easy. Firstly, we can keep our legs more tucked in as we do it. So the easiest version without feet on the ground is a tuck like this. But then scaling down further, we can put our feet on the ground and then just manipulate manually how much distance there is between our hands and our shoulders, horizontally. So that looks like this, where I can simply work push-ups where I'm trying to keep my hands back towards my hips and my shoulders forward as much as I can at any point in time, and that allows me to find that sweet spot where it's maximally difficult. I can force myself down on my negatives. It's a really important point across all your training, because if we're truly maxing out, negatives should be involuntary. And then we can just keep adjusting that distance between hands and shoulders to make it as hard as possible. Making it even easier, we can drop down to our knees and work there. Again, just taking weight off the hands to allow us to do the movement. So the ground zero version of this movement is just knees on the ground, almost no weight on the hands, and I should be able to go like this and take my hands off the rings and not fall. So you can see this movement scales all the way down from zero strength requirement all the way up to very difficult movement, which if you can perform, means you're going to be pretty jacked in your upper body pushing muscles to be able to do that. So that's planche push-up. Alright, so a very similar situation with the front lever rows. Essentially what we're changing over time is the distance, horizontal distance between the shoulders and the hands on the rings. So in a front lever, that's difficult because that distance is so great, again, meaning a lot of force required at the shoulder to keep the body in place, therefore big lats and other pulling muscles required to do the movement. Scale this down then, we can again tuck our legs in to shorten that distance, make the movement easier. We can also then drop to our feet and again manually adjust that distance between shoulders and hands by pushing the rings away towards our hips, away from our shoulders to make the movement harder, and then allowing the rings to drift back in towards our shoulders to make the movement easier. Again, if we want to scale this right down to zero, we can just walk our feet in, again taking weight off the rings so that our hands can come off at any point in time, and we've now found zero strength level, meaning that from absolutely any level of strength and fatigue, we can still train this movement, get in the amount of volume we want for the week before we call it a day. Okay, so that covers our horizontal push and pull. With our vertical movements, things are even simpler because we're not now trying to manipulate the leverage by changing that distance between the hands and the shoulders. Instead, what we're doing is just adjusting how much weight we put on the working arms. So in the case of the handstand push-up, the highest level of progression is obviously doing a full handstand push-up with our whole body weight on our hands. The less I lean on the straps or on a wall to do this, the more difficult the movement is. If I want to scale this down, I can then just take some of that weight off my hands by putting my feet on an elevated platform, so it still allows me to load quite heavily. If I want to scale down even further, I can move my feet down onto the ground, and now I'm taking a lot more weight on my feet as opposed to my hands. To scale this right down, I can walk my feet in towards the rings, and that will allow me to take almost all the weight on my feet to the point where, again, I can have my entire body weight on my feet, 0 on my hands. And again, we've managed to find that point of 0 difficulty where now, even with 0 strength, complete fatigue, I can still train this movement pattern and get in the volume that I want to from my session. So again, that's how we can go all the way from 0 difficulty all the way up to a full handstand push-up. Okay, so for the one arm chin up, this is perhaps the simplest of all the progressions. Essentially what we're doing to work up to the one arm chin up is loading as much weight as we can on the working arm and simply taking weight off by using our feet and our other hands. So we can go all the way from a full one arm chin up with all our weight on the working arm to using another hand for assistance, and then down to using both legs and our other hand for assistance. Now there's no reason to not use both feet and your other hand. You want to give yourself all the assistance you need. Again, we're just regressing things to a level that allows that working arm to work at its maximum strength. We don't care how we scale it down or what the other muscles are doing. We just care about that working arm. So this again can go all the way down to the level where you've got 0 weight on that working arm. You can take your hand off and would still be able to pull. So again, we found 0 and can therefore work all the way from no strength whatsoever all the way up to doing one arm chin-ups. Alright, so with the single leg squat, this is pretty simple. Essentially, we want to manipulate the amount of load that's on that working leg as we're going through a full range of motion single leg squat. So I want you to first imagine that I have 60 kilos of weighted vests on my body, which looks like this, 3 individual 20 kilo weight vests. In American terms, this is about 130 pounds. First step is loading the squat with that much weight. This is by far the easiest way to milk this movement, keep it at your maximum intensity. First obvious way to scale down, use less weight. But the issue with this movement is that it varies so much in the difficulty between the bottom of the rep and the top of the rep that generally the easiest way to train it is to load it up with as much as you can possibly handle. It's going to make the top at least a bit challenging, and then take weight off towards the bottom when it's harder. Easy way to do that is simply using your hand on a stool or some sort of platform next to you, and then using your other leg. So if my right leg is squatting, I can train the movement. Again, I've got 60 kilos on my back, 130 pounds, or as much as is feasible. And as I try and squat against all that resistance, I can scale down by leaning on the chair, using my other foot to help me as I work through the movement. Now, as I get to the top, you're gonna realize that this movement gets a whole lot easier. So that's when we can, again, adjust difficulty up by taking the help away, let that load do its thing. What I like to also do is have some sort of anchor point that I can put my other foot under to pull down and actively make the top of the movement harder because it gets so easy. So that can be a gymnastics ring strap under a door, for instance, or something attached to your squat rack if you've got one, or it can be your friend sitting on your shoulders. But that is that movement, essentially just like with the chin up and the handstand push up. It's just about manipulating how much weight goes on that working limb and adjusting that down as needed. So there you have it. Hopefully that is useful too. Key takeaway here is all of these movements, we have heavy goals. The point is to get there eventually. All of them scale down to 0. So no matter where you're at with your strength now, there is a place that you can start training to build up to those movements. And remember, the further you are away from them now, the faster you can start progressing towards them. So make the most of being early on that progression curve and start training, getting stronger. If you want help, head to my website, heaps of free information there. If you want some more one-on-one advice, feel free to go book a free call with me and we can get you on the path to getting all this stuff right as soon as possible. Anyway, I hope this video has been useful for you. Please go use it, make some gains, and I'll chat to you soon.